Good morning. Today we are reading in the fourth book of the Left Behind series. We are going to be reading chapter 14 today, and I'll begin. The flight to Waukegan had been difficult for Chloe. The drive from Waukegan to Wheeling to drop off Ken Ritz and then onto Mount Prospect was worse. She had slept in Buck's arms during virtually the entire flight, but the Range Rover had been torture. The best Buck could do was let her lie across the back seat, but one of the fasteners connecting the seat to the floor had broken loose during the earthquake, so he had to drive even slower than normal. Still, Chloe seemed to bounce the whole way. Finally, Ken knelt facing the back and tried to brace the seat with his hands. When they got to Milwaukee Airport, Buck walked Ken to the Quonset hut, where he had been given a corner to move into. Always an adventure, Ken said wearily. One of these days, you're going to get me killed. It was stupid to ask you to fly so soon after surgery, Ken, but you were a lifesaver. I'll send you a check. You always do, but I also want to know more about where all you guys are, with your beliefs and everything. Ken, we've been through this before. It's becoming pretty clear now, wouldn't you say? This whole period of history, this is it. Just a little more than 5 more years and it's all over. I can see why people might not have understood what was happening before the rapture. I was one of them. But it's come to one giant countdown. The whole deal now is which side you're on. You're either serving God or you're serving the Antichrist. You've been a supplier for the good guys. It's time you joined our team. I know, Buck. I've never seen anything like how you people take care of each other. It'd be good for me if I could see it all one more time in black and white, like on sheets of papers, pros and cons. That's how I am. I figure it out and I make my decision. I can get you a Bible. I got a Bible somewhere. Are there like 1 or 2 pages that have the whole deal spelled out? Read John and then Romans. You'll see the stuff we've talked about. We're sinners. We're separated from God. He wants us back. He's provided the way. Ken looked uncomfortable. Buck knew he was lightheaded and in pain. Have you got a computer? Yeah, and of course an email address. Let me have it, and I'll write down a news group for you. The guy you brought back from Egypt with me is the hottest thing on the internet. Talk about putting everything on one page for you. He does it. So once I join up, I got the secret mark on my forehead? You sure do. Buck reclined the front passenger seat and moved Chloe there. But it wasn't flat enough, and she retreated again to the back. When Buck finally pulled into the backyard at Donnie's, Tyson rushed out to greet Chloe. As soon as he saw her, he burst into tears. Oh, you poor child. Welcome to your new home. You are safe. Tyson helped Buck remove her from the back seat and opened the door so Buck could carry her inside. Buck headed for the stairs, but Tyson stopped him. Right here, Cameron. See? Tyson had brought down his bed for her. She cannot use the stairs yet. Buck shook his head. I suppose next comes the chicken soup. Tyson smiled and pushed a button on the microwave. Give me 60 seconds. But Chloe did not eat. She slept through the night and off and on the next day. You need a goal, Tyson told her. Where would you like to go on your first day out? I want to see the church and Loretta's house. Will not that be, it will be painful, but Buck says if I hadn't run, I never would have survived. I need to see why, and I want to see where Loretta and Donnie died. When she hobbled to the kitchen table and sat by herself, she asked only for her computer. It pained Buck to watch her peck away with one hand. When he tried to help, she rebuffed him. He must have looked hurt. Honey, I know you want to help, she said. You searched for me until you found me, and nobody can ask for more than that, but please don't do anything for me unless I ask. You never ask. I'm not a dependent person, Buck. I don't want to be waited on. This is war, and there aren't enough days left to waste. As soon as I get this hand working, I'm going to take some of the load off Tyson. He's on the computer day and night. Buck got his own laptop and wrote to Ken Ritz about the possibility of going to Israel. He couldn't imagine it ever being safe for Tyson there, but Tyson was so determined to go. Buck was afraid there would be no choice. His ulterior motive with Ken, of course, was to see if he had come to a spiritual decision. As he was transmitting the message, Chloe called out from the kitchen, "Oh my word, Buck, you've got to see this." He hurried to peer over her shoulder. The message on the screen was several days old. It was from Hattie Durham. Rayford was afraid Leon Fortunato would be bored on the trip to Rome and might pester him and Mac in the cockpit. But every time Rayford clicked on the secret intercom to monitor the cabin, Leon was whistling, humming, singing, talking on the phone, and noisily moving about. Once Rayford had Mac take over while he found an excuse to wander into the cabin. Leon was arranging the mahogany table where he and Pontifex Maximus Peter Matthews and the 10 Kings would meet prior to seeing Carpathia. Leon looked excited enough to burst. "You will remain in the cockpit as soon as our guests join us, will you not?" "Sure," Rayford said. It was clear Leon needed no company. Rayford didn't expect any secrets listening in on Leon and Matthews, but he loved the entertainment possibilities. Fortunato was such a Carpathia groupie, and Matthews so condescending and independent, that the two were like oil and water. Matthews was used to being treated like royalty. Fortunato treated Carpathia like the king of the world, that he was, but was slow to serve anyone else, and often curt when those who served him. When Matthews boarded in Rome, he immediately treated Fortunato as one of his valets, and he already had two. A young man and woman carried his things aboard and stood chatting with him. As Rayford listened in, he was exposed again to Matthews' gull. Every time Fortunato suggested it was time to get underway, Matthews interrupted. "Could I get a cold drink, Leon?" Matthews said. There was a long pause. "Certainly," Fortunato said flatly. Then with sarcasm, "And your staff?" "Yes, something for them as well." "Fine. Pontiff Matthews? And then I think we should really be, and something to munch. Thank you, Leon." After two such encounters, Fortunato's silence was deafening. Finally, Leon said, "Pontiff Matthews, I really think it's time." "How long are we going to sit here, Leon? What do you say we get this show on the road?" "We cannot move with unauthorized personnel on the plane." "Who's not authorized?" "Your people. I introduced you, Leon. These are my personal assistants." "You were under the impression they were invited?" "I go nowhere without them." "Well, I'm going to have to check with His Excellency." "I'm sorry?" "I'll have to check with Nikolai Carpathia." "You said His Excellency." "I plan to talk that over with you en route." "Talk to me now, Leon." "Pontiff, I would appreciate your addressing me by my title. Is that too much to ask?" "Titles are what we're talking about. Where did Carpathia get off using Excellency?" "It was not his choice. Yes, and I suppose Potentate wasn't his choice either. Secretary General just never did it for him, did it?" "As I said, I want to discuss the new title with you during the trip." "Then let's get going." "I'm not authorized to transport uninvited guests." "Mr. Fortunato, these are invited guests. I invited them. My title is not Mr." "Oh, so the Potentate is now His Excellency, and you're what, Potentate? No, let me guess, you're Supreme something or other. Am I right?" "I need to check this with His Excellency." "Well, hurry and tell His Excellency that Pontiff Maximus thinks it's nervy to switch from a royal title, already an overstatement, to a sacred one." Rayford heard only Fortunato's end of the conversation with Nikolai, of course, but Leon had to eat crow. "Pontiff," he said finally, "His Excellency has asked me to express his welcome and his assurance that anyone you feel necessary to make your flight comfortable is an honor for him to have on board." "Really?" Matthew said. "Then I insist on a cabin crew." Fortunato laughed. "I'm serious, Leon. What is your title, man?" "I serve as the rank of commander." "Commander? Tell the truth now, Commander. Is it actually Supreme Commander?" Fortunato did not respond, but Matthews must have detected something in his face. Is it? Isn't it? Well, even if it isn't, I insist. If I am to call you commander, it shall be supreme commander. Is that acceptable? Fortunato sighed loudly. The actual title is supreme commander. Yes, you may call me either. Oh no, I may not. Supreme Commander it is. Now, Supreme Commander Fortunato, I am deadly serious about cabin service on a long flight like this, and I am shocked at your lack of foresight in not providing it. We have all the amenities, Pontiff. We felt it more necessary to have a full complement of service personnel with the regional ambassadors begin to join us. You were wrong. I wish not to leave the ground until this plane is properly staffed. If you have to check that with His Excellency, feel free. There was a long silence, and Rayford assumed the two were staring each other down. You're serious about this, Fortunato said. Serious as an earthquake. The call button sounded in the cockpit. Flight deck, Mac said. Go ahead. Gentlemen, I have decided to employ a cabin crew. Between here and Dallas, I shall be contracting with one of the airlines here. Please communicate with the tower that we could be delayed for as long as 2 or 3 hours. Thank you. Begging your pardon, sir, Mac said, but our delay here has already cost us 4 places in line for takeoff. They're being flexible because of who we are, but did you misunderstand something? Leon said. Not at all, sir. Roger that delay. Hattie's email message read, Dear CW, I didn't know who else to turn to. Well, actually, I did, but I got no response from AS at the private number she gave me. She says she carried her phone all the time, so I'm worried what happened to her. I need your help. I lied to my former boss and told him my people were from Denver. When I changed my flight from Boston to go west instead of east, I was hoping he would think I was going to see my family. Actually, they live in Santa Monica. I'm in Denver for a whole other reason. I'm at a reproductive clinic here. Now, don't overact. Yes, they do abortions, and they're pushing me that direction. In fact, that's mostly what they do. But they do also ask every mother if she's considered her options, and every once in a while, a baby is carried to term. Some are put up for adoption, some are raised by the mother, others are raised by the clinic. This place also serves as a safe house, and I am here anonymously. I cut my hair short and dyed it black, and I wear colored contact lenses. I'm sure no one recognizes me. They give us access to these computers a few hours every week. At other times, we write things and draw pictures and exercise. They also encourage us to write to friends and loved ones and make amends. Sometimes they urge us to write to the fathers of our children. I couldn't do that, but I do need to talk to you. I have a private satellite phone. Do you have a number like AS does? I'm scared. I'm confused. Some days abortion seems the easiest solution, but I'm already growing attached to this child. I might be able to give it up, but I don't think I could end its life. I told a counselor I felt guilty about becoming pregnant when I wasn't married. She had never heard anything like that in her life. She said I ought to stop obsessing about right and wrong and start thinking about what was best for me. I feel more guilty about considering abortion than I do about what you would call immortality. I don't want to make a mistake, and I don't want to keep living like this. I envy you and your close friends. I sure hope you all survive the earthquake. I suppose your dad and your husband believe it was the wrath of the Lamb. Maybe it was. I wouldn't be surprised. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume the worst. So please get back to me if you can. Say hi to everybody. My love to L. Love, H. Now, Buck, Chloe said, I don't mind if you help me. Just reply as fast as you can that I was hurt and away from my email and that I'm going to be fine, and here's my phone number, okay? Buck was already typing. Rayford slipped his laptop out of his flight bag and left the plane. On the way, he passed the two bored young people, a red-faced and sweating Leon on the phone, and Matthews. The Supreme Pontiff of Enigma Babylon glanced at Rayford and looked away. So much for pastoral interest. Rayford thought. Pilots were just props on this guy's stage. Rayford sat near a window in the terminal. With his amazing computer powered by the sun, he could communicate from anywhere. He checked the bulletin board where Tyson kept in touch with his growing church. In just a few days, hundreds of thousands of people had responded to his messages. Open messages to Nikolai Carpathia pleaded for amnesty for Tyson Ben Judah. One summarized the consensus: surely a lover of peace like yourself, Potent Carpathia, who aided in Rabbi Ben Judah's escape from Orthodox zealots in his homeland, has the power to return him safely to Israel, where he can communicate with so many of us who love him. We're counting on you. Rayford smiled. Many were so new in the faith that they did not know Carpathia's true identity. When he wondered, might Tyson himself have too blatantly exposed Carpathia. When he checked his mail, Rayford was dumbfounded to learn of the contact from Hattie. He had strangely mixed emotions. He was glad she and her baby were safe, but he so badly wanted a message from Amanda that he found himself jealous. He resented that Chloe had heard from Hattie before he heard from Amanda. God forgive me, he prayed silently. Several hours later, the Condor 216 finally took off from Rome with a full cabin crew, compliments of airlines. When Rayford wasn't planning the Tigris River dive, he eavesdropped on the cabin. Now this is more like it, Supreme Commander Fortunato, Matthews was saying. Isn't this better than the buffet line you had planned? Admit it. Everyone appreciates being served, Fortunato allowed. Now there are some issues His Excellency has asked me to brief you on. Quit calling him that. It drives me nuts. I was going to save this news, but I might as well tell you now. Response to my leadership has been so overwhelming that my staff has planned a week-long festival next month to celebrate my installation. Though I no longer serve the Catholic Church, which has been blended into our much bigger faith, it seemed appropriate to some that my title change as well. I believe it will have more immediate impact and be more easily understood by the masses if I simply go by Peter II. That sounds like a pope's title, Fortunato said. Of course it is. Though some would call my position a papacy, I frankly see it as much larger. You prefer Peter II over Supreme Pontiff or even Pontiff Maximus? Less is more. It has a ring to it, doesn't it? We'll have to see how his Potent Carpathia feels about it. What does the global community Potent have to do with the one world faith? Oh, he feels responsible for the idea and for your elevation to this post. He needs to remember that democracy wasn't all bad. At least they had separation between church and state. Pontiff, if you ask what His Excellency has to do with you, I must ask, where would Naima Babylon be without financing from the global community? I could ask the reverse. People need something to believe in. They need faith. They need tolerance. We need to stand together and rid the world of the hate mongers. The vanishings took care of narrow-minded fundamentalists and intolerant zealots. Have you seen what's happening on the internet? That rabbi who blasphemed his own religion in his own country is now developing a huge following. It falls to me to compete with that. I have a request here. Rayford heard rustling papers. For increased financial support from the global community. His Excellency was afraid of that. Bull! I have never known Carpathia to be afraid of anything. He knows we have tremendous expenses. We are living up to his name. We're a one-world faith. We influence every continent for peace and unity and tolerance. Every ambassador ought to be mandated to increase his share of contributions to Babylon. Pontiff, no one has ever faced the fiscal problems His Excellency faces now. The balance of power has shifted to the Middle East. New Babylon is the capital of the world. Everything will be centralized. The rebuilding of that city alone has caused the Potent to propose significant tax increases across the board. But he's also rebuilding the whole world. Global community forces are at work on every continent, reestablishing communications and transportation, and engaging in cleanup, rescue, relief, sanitation, you name it. Every region leader will be asked to call his subjects to sacrifice. And you get that dirty work, don't you, Supreme Commander? I do not consider it dirty work, Pontiff. It is my honor. to facilitate His Excellency's vision. There you go again with that excellency business. Allow me to tell you a personal story I will share with each ambassador during this trip. Indulge me, and you'll see that the Potentate is a deeply spiritual man with a spark of the divine. This I have to hear, Matthew said, chuckling. Carpathia as clergy. Now there's a picture. I pledge that every word is true. It will change forever the way you see our Potentate. Rayford turned off the surveillance switch. Leon's telling Matthews his Lazarus story, he muttered. Oh boy, Mac said. The Condor was over the Atlantic in the middle of the night, and Rayford was dozing. The intercom roused him. When convenient, Captain Steele, Fortunato said, I would appreciate a moment. I hate to cater, Rayford told Mac, but I'd just as soon get it out of the way. He depressed the button. Is now okay? Fortunato met him mid-plane and beckoned him to the rear, far from where Matthews and his two young charges were sleeping. His Excellency has asked me to approach you on a delicate matter. It is becoming increasingly embarrassing to not be able to produce Rabbi Tyson ben Judah of Israel for his followers. Oh? His Excellency knows you to be a man of your word. When you tell us you do not know where ben Judah is, we take this at face value. The question then becomes, do you know access to someone who does know where he is? Why? His Excellency is prepared to personally ensure the rabbi's safety. He will make any threat to the safety of ben Judah simply not worth the consequences. So why not put that word out and see if ben Judah comes to you? Too risky. You may think you know His Excellency views you. Know how His Excellency views you. However, as the one who knows him best, I know he trusts you. He admires your integrity. And he's convinced I have access to ben Judah. Let's not play games, Captain Steele. The global community is far-reaching now. We know from more sources than just the talkative Dr. Rosenzweig that your son-in-law helped the rabbi escape. Rosenzweig is one of Carpathia's greatest admirers, more loyal than Nikolai deserves. Didn't Chaim seek Carpathia's help in the ben Judah matter back when Nikolai first became prominent? We did all we could. That is not true. If you expect me to be a man of my word, don't insult my intelligence. If my own son-in-law abated in ben Judah's flight from Israel, wouldn't I have an idea whether he had assistance from the global community? Fortunato did not respond. Rayford was careful not to reveal anything he had heard solely through the bugging device. He would never forget when Fortunato had passed on Rosenzweig's plea for help for his beleaguered friend. Ben Judah's family had been massacred and he was in hiding, yet Carpathia had laughed it off and said in so many words that he might turn ben Judah over to the Zealots. Those close to the situation know the truth, Leon. Carpathia's claim to credit for the well-being of Tyson ben Judah is bogus. I have no doubt he could protect the rabbi, and he would have been able to then, but he did not. You may be right, Captain Steele. I do not have personal knowledge of that situation. Leon, you know every detail of everything that goes on. It appeared Leon enjoyed hearing that. He didn't argue it. Regardless, it would be counterproductive from a public relations standpoint for us to adjust our position now. We are believed to have helped him escape, and we would lose credibility to admit we had nothing to do with that. But since I know, Rayford said, am I not allowed some skepticism? Leon sat back and steepled his fingers. He exhaled. All right, he said. His Excellency has authorized me to ask what you require in order to grant him this favor. And the favor is the delivery of Tyson ben Judah to Israel. What Rayford wanted was his wife's name cleared, but he could not betray Mac's confidence. So I'm asked my price now rather than be required to trade my own daughter. It didn't seem to surprise Fortunato that Rayford had heard about the fiasco in Minneapolis. That was a mistake in communications, he said. You have His Excellency's personal word that he intended that the wife of one of his employees be reunited with her husband and given the best care. Rayford wanted to laugh aloud or spit in Fortunato's face. He couldn't decide which. Let me think about it, he said. How long do you need? There is pressure on His Excellency to do something about ben Judah. We will be in the States tomorrow. Can we not make some arrangement? You want me to ferry him back on the Condor with all the ambassadors? Of course not. But as long as we are going to be in that region, it only makes sense that we take care of it now. Assuming Tyson Ben Judah is there, we believe that if we can locate Cameron Williams, we will have located Tyson Ben Judah. Then you know more than I do. Rayford began to stand, but Fortunato held up a hand. There is one more thing. Let me guess. Are her initials HD? Yes, it is important to His Excellency that the relationship be gracefully severed. Despite what he said to the world, actually, I said it. He did not sanction it. I don't believe that. Believe what you wish. You are aware of the public perception. His Excellency is determined not to be embarrassed by Miss Durham. You'll recall they were introduced by your son-in-law, whom I had not even met yet, Radford said. Granted, his disappearance was a nuisance. It made His Excellency appear incapable of controlling his own household. The earthquake provided a logical explanation for their separation. It is crucial that while out on her own, Miss Durham not do or say anything embarrassing. And so you want me to do what? Tell her to behave? Frankly, Captain, you would not be overstating it to inform her that accidents happen. She cannot remain invisible long. If it becomes necessary to eliminate the risk, we have the ability to effect this with expediency. Anyway, and in a manner that would not reflect on His Excellence, but allow him to gain sympathy. May I tell you what I just heard you say, so we're clear? Certainly. You want me to tell Hattie Durham to keep her mouth shut, or you'll kill her and deny it. Fortunato appeared stricken. Then he softened and stared at the ceiling. We are communicating, he said. Rest assured that if I make contact with Miss Durham, I will pass along your threat. I assume you will remind her that repeating that message would constitute cause. Oh, I got it. It's a blanket threat. You'll handle both assignments then? You don't see the irony? I'm to pass along a death threat to Miss Durham, yet trust you with protecting Tyson Ben Judah? Right. Well, it may be correct, but it's not right. Rayford trudged to the cockpit, where he was met with Mac's knowing look. You hear that? I heard, Mac said. I wish I had recorded it. Who would you play it for? Fellow believers? You'd be preaching to the choir. In the old days, you could take a DVD like that to the authorities, but these are the authorities. What's your price going to be, Ray? What do you mean? Ben Judah belongs in Israel, and Carpathia has to ensure his safety, doesn't he? You heard Fortunato. They can cause an accident and wind up with sympathy. But if he pledges a personal guarantee, Ray, he'll keep Tyson safe. Don't forget what Tyson wants to do in Israel. He's not just going to chat with the two witnesses or look up old friends. He'll be training as many as 144,000 evangelists as he can get there. He'll be Nikolai's worst nightmare. Like I said, what's your price? What's the difference? You expect the Antichrist to stand by a deal? I wouldn't give a nickel for Hattie Durham's future, whether she toes the line or not. Maybe if I string this out long enough, I can learn something from Fortunato about Amanda. I'm telling you, Max, she's alive somewhere. If she's alive, Ray, why no contact? I don't want to offend you, but it is possible she's what they say she is. And that's the end of chapter 14. Thank you for joining me today, and you go out and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.